Hi, I'm Michael Silverglide coming to you from the Grass Valley booth at NAB, and in this segment we are going to talk with Mark Hilton, Vice President of Live Production Products. Mark, what does that mean?
Well, great question. This is part of the Products and Technology Group, which includes management. So I have a group of folks who build who design and build the production switchers, the cameras that we're using here on the set, on the studio, and our replay system. And then I work very closely with our networking team to provide a complete production solution.
Okay. So Grass Valley frequently talks about native HDR. And how does this differ from existing HLG, PQ, S-Log, and everything else that's out there?
Yeah, so you mentioned two that are our standards, HLG and PQ. We have the option within the camera head to output either of those, as well as an SDR solution. So we also do the processing inside the camera head. So once it comes out of the camera head, even before it gets to the base station, it's in the format that it needs to be for transmission all the way to the home. Some alternative approaches have been to take an intermediate format, such as S-Log3, which forces you to do a conversion at some point along the chain. In this case, if you know that your transmission is going to be, or your distribution path is going to be, say, HLG, you can get it directly from the camera head and push that all the way through. We also do give the ability to do some slight modifications to those curves for artistic intent, and by doing that in the camera head, we're able to avoid any kind of banding errors that you might see if you do it through a downstream conversion process. So that's what we mean, and then we can take that all the way through our complete production chain in that format.
So for HDR to actually be useful, it has to be supported not only in the camera, but throughout the entire production chain, and it has to get to the home. So how is Grass Valley addressing downstream conversion?
Well, we're clearly on the sort of the sharp end of the stick here, where we're helping with the production of the content in a format that's useful, that can be pushed through a variety of distribution channels. You know, we have terrestrial, we have satellite, we have cable, you know, we have over the air, but also OTT. Over the top through, say, the internet. And the requirement is that it be a 10-bit type of process to maintain that HDR capability. So there is some investment that will be required depending on the method of transmission. Over the top already is there today. We can put that if you're doing an H.264 and H.264. That's a 10-bit encoding process, so there will be some upgrades that will be needed. But we're essentially, and that's not necessarily our side of the business, but we're providing that content in a way that's very easy to make available out to the home.
So how is Grass Valley addressing HDR content in a mixed HDR and SDR environment?
Yeah, so as we know, just like in the days when we were SD and HD, we had to deal with these kind of mixed formats. A lot of our products, well, we certainly have a wide range of conversion products, external products. We've been putting a lot of that functionality into our base products, into our switchers and our replay systems. So we're putting these, what we call up mappers or down mappers. Not to be confused with up converters and down converters, which are sort of HD to 4K and so forth. So those are now built into the product, coming out of the camera. Again, it's native. It can be SDR or HDR. If it's HDR and there's some other sources we need to mix within, say, a production switcher, we can up map those either externally or internally, and so you have a consistent resolution and a consistent you know, dynamic range, if you will, when you're mixing a show. So we provide that ability to have a you know, top to bottom or front to back process.
So there are both automatic algorithmic conversions and more manually adjusted conversions for HDR. What are the best applications for each type of conversion?
So I think the simple way to think about this is when you don't know what the lighting conditions are going to be, and you don't necessarily want to invest in somebody continually modifying and writing the shaders for both SDR and HDR, the automatic mapping and down mapping is a nice option. That's a dynamic solution. These things need to be tested out, clearly, and a lot of the trials that are going on right now are focused just on that. Static would be in an environment where you understand the lighting conditions. You know, if you're in a studio environment or in an area where it's a bright sunny day and it's a relatively short thing, there's no clouds that are going to come over, you can do a static mapping, shading, if you will, and it'll work just fine. So those are some things to consider.
So traditionally, most people associate HDR with 4K, as it's part of the standard, but there are some people who are doing 1080p 3G with HDR.
Right.
What are you seeing with regard to the industry doing HD with HDR?
Well, you know, that's a great topic, and a lot of that's going to be discussed here at NAB. It comes down to bandwidth, and again, this concept of getting into the home. Getting a 4K signal, which is natively a 12 gig signal, can be much more challenging than taking an existing 3 gig transmission path, adding HDR to it in the form of 10-bit. So there's, and it's a very compelling, when you really look at these side by side, unless you have a very large monitor, 4K doesn't jump out at you, whereas HDR does, even on a medium-sized monitor. So there's clearly an economic case to be made for a 3 gig HDR solution, and we're obviously providing both solutions as a vendor, but we're working closely with a lot of our customers on making those decisions, and it will be a region, country dependent sort of approach, we expect.
So if there's one thing you want people to take away from NAB, and especially here at the Grass Valley booth, with regard to HDR, what would that be?
Well, I think it's just that we understand the challenges associated with the HDR. We have designed our solutions to handle it. We have a very efficient, complete solution from camera acquisition all the way through the production chain. We have high quality up mapping and down mapping. So if you want to go with HDR, we're the vendor to use.
Thanks, Mark.
Absolutely.
And we'll be back with more from NAB 2018 from Las Vegas soon.